Old-fashioned Bonanza crash that happened in 1997, but to give you a little background music, I've been flying airplanes since the 70s. Back in 67, I bought my first airplane in 1955 Tri-Pacer after I soloed, and then from there moved to a B-55 Bonanza B-50, 1950 vintage, and then from that I went to a 1955 310 in 1980. That was in 1972, and then from there flew that 310 for 10 years, traded it for a B-55 Baron, flew that for about 12 years, and then decided I'd retire, look for a smaller airplane, and that's where Jeff and I started looking for a Bonanza. And we found one in Oklahoma, and it was about the right price, around $30,000. It had all the good stuff on it, like a autogas STC. It had a large third window, it had a hydraulic prop on it and all that, ready to go.
This sun's killing me. It's not showing up in the viewfinder. It's getting too bright where that bright area is. So hopefully we're going to be able to tell something about it. Okay, we'll go inside and then I'll open some panels. Okay, here's the baggage compartment. Sorry I didn't, you can see I hadn't had a chance to vacuum it out. So, okay, here's the baggage compartment. It's open. See if we get enough light back there to. Okay, now here's the access to the ski tube. Right here, so you can, but I'll give you a little sense of what it looks like. Okay, now they took the 6-pack instrument cluster and mounted it over where the glove box normally is. Here's the MX300, the 720 digital. It's got the transponder appendix with mode C. Here's the Britain Autopilot. It's all self-contained, the wing leveler. As I said, you can, I don't think it was working. This, I have no idea what it is. It looks like it might have been a radar altimeter of some sort or something, but so if you have a question about it, which I'm sure you probably would, I don't know the answer. This is a DGO-10 HSI. Got the late style artificial horizon. And since it's fuel injection, you see you have the other type gauge that has the fuel pressure and your manifold pressure in a single gauge. Okay, back here to the panel, you know, under the stabilizer, hopefully we'll have enough light here that you can tell something about it. I've got that open up there in the front to kind of help with the light. Some of the lines are not quite as crisp as the premium paint jobs, but it certainly, as I said, draws compliments. Let me get, one thought I was about to quit, let me open the cowling and I'll show you inside the engine compartment. Start out on the sunlit side because this dark and light, this bright sunshine and direct sunlight. Can't complain about the weather today, but it would be better for taking the pictures.
So I made a deal, and we scheduled a visit down there to Oklahoma to pick up the airplane. And then Jeff,
I decided to go. I had a really bizarre feeling about it, let's just say that. And I've been around airplanes my whole life, but there was something about that just gave me an uneasy feeling. So I decided that in the efforts, best interest of safety, that I would go ahead and tag along. And I was really petrified about it, to be quite honest with you. It was very, just a weird, I don't know, weird feeling about the whole thing. So I felt like I was obligated to go, and just to be a help for whatever I thought might be, whatever it is that I was worrying about. So anyway,
we got down into, flew into Tucson, and then went into, got picked up by O'Connor, the guy who owned the airplane. He picked us up in his A36, took us over there, showed us the airplane. I took a quick flight in it, and then Jeff and I hopped in the airplane, and we took it off and flew north, heading home, and we were, getting 30-knot headwind and so forth, and got to Goodland, Kansas, and tried to go a little bit further to look for a runway that didn't have a huge crosswind on it, but decided to end up back at Goodland. We did a crosswind landing at about 30 knots, and they got it on the ground okay. And then the next morning, got up, fueled up the airplane, took 90 gallons. This airplane had 6 tanks in it, and so we took off from Goodland about 8:30 in the morning. Had about a 20-knot crosswind, and got to start lifted off the ground. Got to about maybe 800-900 feet over the city of Goodland, and all of a sudden the engine quit, and that was kind of shocking. And then I immediately turned down and switched the tanks and hit the boost pump, but it was starting to stall. It was blinking. And Jeff, what were you thinking?
well, I'll tell you what, that angle of attack with a 20-knot headwind, that airplane, like our heads about hit the dashboard. That's when that engine quit. I mean, that's how dramatic. It was incredible. It's like somebody put a parachute on your back. And the stall light, this airplane does not have a stall horn on it. It has a stall light, upper left corner of the instrument panel. And that thing literally started flashing within just, oh man, maybe about 5 seconds, I'd say. And but he did a great job. The yoke was already full forward at the stop immediately, which is instinctively what you've got to do, because if you stall that airplane at that altitude, you're not going to recover from it and survive. So he did a great job there. But boy, that was when the airplane was hanging there. I can remember seeing the yoke. I remember immediately yelling, "Stall, stall, 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 stall," about as loud as I could possibly, and about as many times as I have no idea how many. Yoke full forward, light flashing, but then finally, the airplane just nosed over. And
Yeah, well, and what I did, I knew I had to turn left downwind because we were over the city, so it's not good to land the engine out in downtown. So made about a 180-degree turn to the left. Knew there was a field over there someplace. Poured the nose straight to the ground, and got some airspeed up. Had to get a lot of them. I knew I was turning into a tailwind, and at the last minute just pulled up as we came over the fence onto a plowed cornfield, and no gear down and nose flaps down, touched down relatively gently, just bumped along, and relatively smooth landing, prop hit. It was one of the big jerky moments, and then stopped. And there we were, on the ground in a cornfield in Goodland, Kansas.
No engines, gyros spinning is all you heard.
Yeah.
And we were, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, are you okay?" And it was interesting too, because the airplane did a 180-degree turn as we were sliding. And so I just remember it was a beautiful sunny day, and there were big waves of dirt going over. It looked like just like you were in the ocean, and you were having a wave go over the top of your head. It's absolutely what it looked like. And the props all curled up, and it was really strange. And it's strange to get out of your airplane and not have to step down,
Well, it wasn't but 2 minutes later that the police showed up, and then an hour later the people from the airport came out with a backhoe, and we spent the rest of the morning getting the airplane out, and I showed them how to put the lift around the engine cowling and all that so not to wreck anything, and slowly lifted it up, got it high enough to lower the landing gear, and then dug trenches and pulled it out. And we were, unlike any place else you could do on the West Coast, like Seattle, is that we got a police escort through downtown Goodland, Kansas, back to the airport. And that was, pretty exciting. And Jeff had driving some old Packard back and forth to flatten the ground around the plowed field, and we got it out there and back to the airport, and then later on we went home. Which brings us to the thing that airport, the damage to the airplane was relatively minor considering, but since we didn't have any of the flaps down, none of the control surfaces got hurt, only the belly did. I called the insurance company, and Jeff and I found somebody to haul us up to Denver. We flew back home. And one interesting thing happened though on the repair. The people who were doing the engine overhaul, which I wanted to have done, I explained to them, do not torque the prop on 400 pounds like it says in the manual, because this is a hydraulic prop. It's got to be 300 foot-pounds. They did. They torqued it on at 400 pounds, did a test flight, the seal shredded, and the engine blew again, and they had to land it and overhaul it again. And then, after they got all the thing overhauled the second time, cylinders back on, Continental calls up and says, hey, we got to recall all those cylinders. And so they had to rebuild it a third time. And then about 6 months later, in September, I flew down to Denver, picked up the airplane, met the guy just close to Denver Airport. We took off when it was getting dark. It ran into a huge thunderstorm, and then had to land short of Dodge City, where the airplane was being rebuilt. Waited out this thunderstorm, took off about midnight, flew through the horrible rain and got into Dodge City. Picked up the airplane in the morning, checked it out, flew up to Rock City, landed at Rock City, and on the landing, the right brake blew out. Oh crap. So now what am I going to do? So then we had a mechanic come down, it cost $2,000 to get a new cylinder thing. I said, forget it, just plug it up. Took off with one brake, flew to Pendleton, landed no problem, and picked it up, and flew on up to down the Columbia Gorge, got running up to I-5 and to Crest Air Park and got her home.
So how was it?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Well, the belly nowhere. That's fine. Once I got the Bonanza home, the first thing I did was order a whole new set of Cleveland brakes and install those to replace the damaged brakes. that were on the airplane when I got it. The next thing was to look at the interior, and I pulled out all the interior and had it taken to a professional shop and reupholstered. Not sure red was the best color, and that was done and reinstalled in the first year we had it. And during that time, I also updated the radios and added a new 300R plus a new HSI, a engine analyzer, and I bought a King GPS, which I mounted on the front of the panel. It was a very nice color GPS. Worked very well. Also added a G meter, which I put in all my airplanes to kind of keep me track of banging through turbulence and thunderstorms and whatnot if I'm not overstressing the aircraft. And then added some more instruments to the instrument panel to update those. And one of the things I wanted to add to the aircraft also, in addition to the hydraulic prop, was a web methodology of checking the fuel pump. Now the fuel pump is the reason that the engine quit in the first place. It has a T1 fuel pump and it has a shear pin in it, and that shear pin wears over time, and so it's very important to check that each time you do an annual. So I made sure I had a updated and brand new shear pin in that T1 fuel pump. If it does shear, the electric backup will kick in eventually, but it takes too long. And referring back to the incident we had with the engine quitting at 800 or 900 feet over Goodland, Kansas, that's an incident where many pilots take too long to figure out what to do, and 70% of the engine failures at that altitude end up in fatalities or a destroyed aircraft. Now, we were lucky that we were in Goodland, Kansas, with flat ground all around. Had we been here at Crest Air Park, we might have ended up in the trees. So we're very lucky. One of the things that's interesting is that the Air Force did a study on pilots, and we're talking about Air Force pilots now, that had an anomaly happen in a test situation, and that 10% of the pilots took 4 to 4.5 seconds to figure out what happened, and another 4 to 4.5 seconds to take corrective action. Well, in our case, we would have been stalled and on the ground dead. So 90% of the Air Force pilots were able to recognize it within a second or so and take corrective action within the next second or so. That's really required when you're having a low altitude engine failure like that. It's so easy to stall the airplane, and many happens, and there's lots of stories about that. The Bonanza is a great airplane to fly. That particular airplane, and we've flown it to Oshkosh and all over the place in the United States, had 90 gallons of fuel on board. The mains held 20 each on each side, and then there was two 10-gallon auxiliary tanks, and then there was two 15-gallon tip tanks, and we had to manage the fuel. It took a lot, even though there was 90 gallons of fuel. The airplane had very long range, and what I would do is that I'd run the left tank on the engine until I got down to about 50%, and then switch over to the right main tank, and then start fueling from the main 10-gallon auxiliary on the left side to the left tank until the right main tank got down to 50%, and that switched back to the left tank. By that time it was back full again and used up the 10 gallons from the original ox tank, and then pump into the right main tank. And then when that got down to 50%, switch over to the left tank, and then pump the tip tank into the left tank, and do the same when it got down to about 50% for the right tip tank into the right main tank. Anyway, you had to pay attention to the fuel situation on that airplane very carefully because of all the tank switching and pumping you had to do to run it out of the main, because that was the only tank that the engine ran off of. End of this particular section.
think I gotta get a new battery because, you know, you recharge it and it goes dead real fast.
Yeah.
After a number of test flights at our Crust Air Park facility and our home base, we took off for Oshkosh in our Bonanza. We've been there a couple times before in our Baron, and 2 or 3 times in our Bonanza, and later on 5 or 6, 8 times in our Cessna 310. We normally landed at Miles City to refuel and then flew on into Oshkosh and parked in the North 40 where we camped beside the airplane. Bonanza, I found out later, was about 150 pounds heavier than the paperwork said with all the options on it. So it was a difficult time getting much over 10,000 feet going over the Rockies. So we ended up doing a lot of valley flying. Camping at Oshkosh was great, though we couldn't carry much stuff with the Bonanza, so we had to rough it pretty hard. But later on with the 310 we could carry a lot more things, stoves and refrigerators and stuff like that, and enjoyed it too much. So